Greetings, class. Welcome to week 10. I'm now recording from my beautiful home studio, trying to utilize my better camera. I'm also using the webcam just in case. I've got lights, I've got microphones. I'll show you what my studio looks like later. But let's jump right into week 10's lecture. So this week, we want to talk about private detectives. Last week was police detectives. Now we'll move on to private detectives. So what is a private detective? You probably have a few different ideas, but we do want to make sure that we separate private detectives from police detectives because they are very, very different. Okay. Here is a textbook answer right here. A private investigator or private detective, often shortened to PI or private eye. Some people call them private dicks too. I don't know where the dick comes from. Is a person who can be hired by individuals or groups to undertake investigatory law services. Boiled down, PIs are privately employed and serve individual clients rather than the public welfare. Their job is to find things for people who walk into their office and say, hey, I need you to find this. And that may be a thing they lost. It could be a missing person case. It could be a cheating spouse. It could be a whole lot of different things. So in films, what obstacles do private detectives encounter? There's a few of them. Here's a big one, confused loyalties. So the client comes first, but what if the client is a scumbag or a murderer? So unlike police detectives, whose job it is to serve the public welfare, the private detective has to serve their clients. And their clients could be anybody. And anybody's money is good, but the private detective might find themselves in trouble if they're working for someone who is genuinely bad or up to no good. Also, their work often earns them an unsavory reputation. We very often see in movies about private detectives that they are taking pictures of cheating spouses and things like that. That tends to make people a little bit angry. Also, cops and PIs don't get along. And this can mean jail. Because if you're going to have a battle, if the two of them are going to butt up heads together, the police detective and the private detective, who do you think is going to win? One of the people has a badge. The other person has a card which says private detective. Okay. One of them can carry a gun. The other one probably shouldn't. And that's going to mean jail for the private detective, especially if they're trying to protect a client or are somehow or another involved in something that's kind of unsavory that they just can't quite get out of. And this is a common conflict we see in these films because we want to see conflict. The more conflicts, the better. Now, the second topic we want to talk about today is film noir and neo-noir. We're not going to watch any film noir films in this class, but we're going to talk about them. The reason we're not watching any of them is none of our films are old enough to actually fit into the film noir time period. So film noir, which most of you have probably heard of, translation, film dark. It's a film style lasting from 1940 to 1959, very specific time range, known for its use of darkness, emphasis on urban areas, and morally ambivalent outlook. It's often based on pulp literature and coinciding with World War II, the Cold War, and McCarthyism, which was known as the Age of Anxiety. So 1940 to 1959, a whole lot of just really heavy shit going on, and that's what film noir comes out of. Okay. Now, what we are watching in this class, and the film we're watching this week is an example of, is what we call neo-noir. So that's a darker toned and dimly illuminated crime film from the 1960s until the present. So we have that other time period, 1940 to 1959, film noir, 1962 and through now, that's all neo-noir. They're often referred to as neo-noir because they do a lot of the same things as film noir, but they're newer. So examples of that are Point Blank from 1967, Taxi Driver from 1973-74, Chinatown also from 74, and Seven from 1995. So the look of neo-noir films is reminiscent of the classic noir, especially that use of darkness, but the subject matter and politics reflect the social changes of the 1960s onward. So there's a lot of things you can do in neo-noir films that you can't actually do, that you couldn't do in film noir films. Film noir films are pretty edgy, especially their moral ambivalence, but neo-noir is able to do a lot of things that you just couldn't do. Say a lot of things, deal with topics. The next couple of weeks, we'll be looking at films that really try to push that envelope. So the movie for this week is Devil in a Blue Dress. It's from 1995, directed by Carl Franklin, and this film is based on a modern pulp novel by Walter Mosley, who's the creator of the Easy Rawlins detective series. So our synopsis, a recently fired World War II vet reinvents himself as a private detective and gets involved with a whole score of simultaneously important and unsavory characters. So he very quickly gets himself in over his head trying to do this new job, which is being a private investigator. So it's a neo-noir film. It's set in late 1940s South Central Los Angeles. So remember earlier in the class we were talking about South Central Los Angeles and the fact that it has a very long history. Well, we're going to be looking at part of that history. You get a chance to see what South Central looked like before it looked like what it did in Menace to Society and Boys in the Hood and things like that. And it explores a side of the city that noir films never could because there was a serious color line that prevented African Americans from having any real representation in cinema during the era that film noir was popular. So it's what we called the Hollywood Production Code of 1934, and it had ideas about race mixing. So there are a lot of things you couldn't do due to the Hollywood Production Code. Like if you ever wonder why people are always slapping each other instead of punching each other, that was part of it. You couldn't have a person shoot another person in one shot. You had to have a person fire the gun and then another shot of someone going, oh, which looked really stupid, but that was part of the code. And then the biggest crime ever was having a person with dark skin and a person with light skin in the same movie. You just couldn't really do that. So that's something that's, moved on to a large extent by the time that neo-noir films started being made, and then this film in particular, 1995, is really trying to explore that. So our questions this week. Number one, why does Easy agree to take on the case? What are his specific reasons? And why does he keep doing it even after he knows it will cause him more trouble? Because he definitely starts getting in a lot of trouble, which is something we want in a private detective film because it makes it more exciting. But why is Easy choosing to do this? Number two, what are Easy Rawlins' strengths and weaknesses as a detective? Number three, what does race have to do with the story? Number four, why is Mouse's arrival important to Easy and to the narrative of the film? So Mouse is a friend of Easy's. He shows up about midway through, and we want to talk about his importance just to the film in general and also to Easy, as well as being an incredibly amusing character. He's probably one of my favorite neo-noir characters of all time. And number five, why is the resolution of the case almost unimportant? So think about all the things that happen in this film, what Easy ends up with, what he learns, where everybody goes at the end of this, and why is the resolution almost unimportant? So let me end this PowerPoint real quick and just show you folks where everything is located again. I think you folks probably already have a pretty good idea from last week, but I just want to reiterate so that you folks aren't in the dark. So if we go to the class, 14C, scroll down here, and remember I broke these into weekly lessons. This lecture is going to be located in this folder right here, and then you also have printed versions or text versions of the notes, PDF form. We also have accessible notes as well. It will work with the screen reader if need be. And then I'm going to have two discussions, one on private detectives, just any experience you might have had with them, and then also one on the discussion questions. And then here is the link for the movie as well. Okay, and this lecture will be located in here, embedded someplace. And this is the way we're doing the class from now on. And hopefully this is working for you folks. If it doesn't, shoot me an email. Let me know if there's anything else you want on a weekly basis in here, and we'll try to make that happen. Anyway, enjoy, and I will see you folks in week 11.